fuck, dude.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. It's a great compliment.
So, Alex, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited about this. We've been talking about doing a podcast for a minute.
Yeah, dude, I'm sorry for moving the dates like 100 times.
Not an issue. I completely get how it is working with projects and
Yeah, man.
a lot of different schedules. So
Yeah, then
No
having like
issues on my
another
side.
job and doing a bunch of other shit.
yeah.
So, like, I always ask this question first just to start off, kind of to get like a gauge of how you got into martial arts. So let's start with that.
Martial arts is like my entire life. So it's a unique, it's a special story for me, right? It's a big part of, how I characterize myself. So like, I remember my first thought of martial arts was watching like a Bruce Lee movie as a kid.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Power Rangers, you know what I mean? Dragon Ball Z. Like
Did you watch Three Ninjas?
Three Ninjas.
That was dope.
Just that early 90s ninja.
Dude, which was one of the best eras.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree. So like that was just always something that I was gravitated towards, obviously little child and exciting action and stuff like that. And I remember the catalyst for this whole thing was like, I played soccer and I got bullied by some other teammate.
Okay.
And I remember, this is like first grade and I still have like vivid, like traumatic memory of this. Like this kid was just, you could tell he was kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
We can curse.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're good.
He's just a, bad kid, little shithead kid.
Yeah.
And I remember he pushed me down, whatever the reason was. And he sat on my chest.
Oh, fuck.
And started, hitting me. Obviously it wasn't that bad, but as a little kid, it's
yeah,
super
traumatizing.
traumatic. And so I remember that. And then the idea of getting into karate was, where I started thinking next, like, okay, I have to learn how to kick somebody's ass. Like that can never
Did you get
happen
any influence
again.
from your parents from that, or was it
No,
your decision?
my mother's a pacifist.
Okay.
The whole thing was like turn the other cheek,
Yeah.
talk to a parent, talk to an adult. And, as a kid, like, that answer doesn't suffice.
It doesn't
right?
make sense, right? Yeah.
I was like, no, I need to know where do I go to learn how to kick this kid's ass if it happens again, right? Like
Right.
that was in my head.
Automatic.
And just dealing with bullies throughout middle school, which is I feel very standard to a lot of people. There's nothing like intrinsically special about what happened to me. It's just like that standard idea of, people are picking on you and you can't stand up for yourself and you can't handle yourself.
Right.
So that was always an impetus. And then I started doing karate because, it got to the point where my parents were like, all right, fine, just go
In middle
do it.
school.
In middle school, early middle school. And I loved it. I loved the uniform. I loved the tradition of it, learning the katas. I shout out to Miami Sensei, Goju-ryu. I started at a Goju-ryu karate school. And I was obsessed.
Yeah.
Got my black belt there. That's where I was like introduced to like jujitsu concepts and MMA concepts.
Oh, really? At the karate
even
school?
as a kid, yeah.
Oh, cool.
There were a couple guys there that were a little bit more on like the reality side of the martial arts. They still were part of the tradition, but like they're like, look, there's an arm bar, like jab cross, like not hitting kata stances for self-defense.
right. You're not gonna go horse stance
Exactly.
in the middle of a fight.
Exactly. So, that wrestling in high school.
Oh, where'd you go to high school?
Columbus.
Oh shit, you wrestled for Columbus?
Yeah. So, it's very similar circles in like the ground game theory environment. A lot of South Miami guys.
Yeah.
That came, that I know from the Columbus circuit that do jujitsu.
Is that how you met Calienes and?
That's how I knew Carmichael.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm 4 years older than Carmichael, or maybe 5 in the high school, steps.
Right.
So I remember it must have been when I left that he had come in and I knew he was good at wrestling, and he had an older brother that was part of the program.
Yeah.
But we never really connected until the jiu-jitsu side of things way down the line.
Oh shit, that's cool.
So yeah, so that was I always knew about Carmichael.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I knew he was a monster. I knew all that stuff.
Probably from his brother, right?
Well, from his brother, and then just like he would pop up in open mats and smash people. And
I didn't know they did that in wrestling.
No, I'm sorry. Like in the jiu-jitsu side of things. Yeah, I never wrestled with him or had that experience with him.
Right.
But yeah, I always knew Carmichael was good, and I knew Calienes was good. I saw Calienes for the first time grapple at a High Rollers.
Oh, High Rollers. Okay.
Where he went against Chris Barnett,
who's
a super heavyweight MMA fighter.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time I really saw Calienes compete. I was like, damn, okay, like he did really well. I think he submitted him in that match, or maybe went to a draw or something. But like he's a string bean and he's going against this guy that's, almost 300 pounds.
Yeah.
So I thought that was, he had balls for doing that. But yeah, that was my first experience with Carmichael and Calienes.
How'd you do in wrestling? How was
that?
I
did okay. I had already done jiu-jitsu in my karate school.
Yeah.
So I was already used to those rule sets, the submission, being okay in the guard. So like wrestling, it's not that I didn't love it. I love the athletic nature of it and the competitive nature of it.
Right.
But I just thought it was so stupid that like it stops when you're on your back.
Right.
Because I knew that you could
go more. Yeah. Dude, that's crazy because when I remember there was an FIU, there was a wrestling club, and I've never done wrestling. I did judo for a little bit, but I've never done wrestling. And I went to that wrestling club, and I just remember always going to my back to like guard, and they're like, "You can't do that." I'm like, "This is all I know how to do." It was when I was like a blue belt.
Sure.
This is all I can do. So I get that feeling of like it's not that it's dumb. It's that in your mind it kind of makes that doesn't stop there.
Yeah. So I mean, I always had some type of problem with that, and to an extent, I just needed to get over it and like. This is the skill,
that's the rule set.
My adult self would have said, like master the rule set and then be good at jiu-jitsu as well, but like challenge yourself.
Yeah.
But I was a little bit salty about that. So, so I wrestled for a little bit. I did okay.
Yeah.
Definitely not anything to brag about. And then in college, it was funny. I started playing rugby because my dad played rugby as a college guy. So like, I always knew that was a sport that like maybe I wanted to try. It was
like
rough.
A club?
Yeah, it was the FSU rugby club.
Oh, okay.
And I really don't know like where my lack of martial arts passion stopped going from high school to college, but I really had no thought about getting back into it. It was college time. It was like,
I got it. You're trying to party.
Party, explore, just meet new people. Like it just wasn't on my radar.
Right.
So
you went to FSU, so you're
exactly. There's plenty to be distracted.
Right.
So I started doing rugby because that was the fun and exciting thing to do. That was athletic, and the rugby team took a field trip to an MMA gym.
Really?
C4 in Tallahassee. It's no longer there, but
that's interesting.
Yeah, it was. I was like, great, like that's exactly where I'm actually really good. So I can fuck some of these rugby guys up that have been tackling me, and, knocking me around. So we went to C4, and that's where I met Josh Samayan, who was a UFC fighter. Unfortunately, he's passed away since then. But I remember him, being a big personality teaching this class.
Yeah.
And I thought that I knew it all. He was teaching a Kimura, which is like very basic.
Yeah.
So I was like, I know this. Like, I'm talking on the side, and he called me out. Was like, "Hey, you're being an asshole in my class. Like, you want to come teach this shit?" I was like, "No, I'm sorry." So I apologized after, but I kind of just like immediately got reignited from the standpoint of like, what am I doing playing rugby? Like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
So I stopped playing rugby and signed up at the gym.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't sign up. I begged them to clean mats. I had no money. I was a college kid.
Yeah, dude, you're in college. What the fuck?
And I had zero money for it. So I begged to clean mats. This was my shtick, going around to any MMA gym that would let me come in and train. And so that gym closed down. They opened up a new gym, Train Fight Win.
Okay.
Which is still in Tallahassee right now and is a really good mixed
How's the
martial
fight
arts
scene
gym.
up there?
It's good.
Yeah.
Samayan, the reason why I bring him up is because he was the North Florida icon.
Okay.
He was the guy in Tallahassee. He was the Tallahassee fighter. So he helped bring up the scene a lot there.
Yeah.
And that's where I had my first amateur mixed martial arts fights, was in the league that he co-founded.
Okay.
Which is still, it's like one of the most popular amateur pro leagues here in Florida right now.
Is that the one that's online? Because I only found one of your fights online.
Combat Night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that fight.
So they're still to this day.
So that's when you were in college.
That was when they started in college. Yeah. So like I had gone to C4. I met some of these people. I was making friends. It's closing. TFW's opening. And basically all the people from C4 kind of migrated over into TFW.
Got it.
At that point, maybe like a week after that, the first Combat Night 1 happened. And I went with the team to watch it.
Yeah.
I was like,
I got
it. Okay. Like, this is really, really cool. And since then, Combat Night's been a huge, part of my MMA growth. And just from that entertainment standpoint, I watch it all the time. And keep up with the fighters, but that was what convinced me to like, okay, I need to try this.
Yeah.
So I did that in college, fought a couple times. And
how was that first fight for you? Like that first amateur getting in and actually doing that? Because it's very different. I'm assuming that it's very different than going into a grappling competition because you're going to get punched in the face.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a big difference between grappling and MMA. Right. There's a debate about jiu-jitsu being a fight or a match or whatever.
Right.
I don't really care what you call it.
Yeah.
But
if that debate's there, that means it's a reason. You can't say that about MMA.
Exactly.
You can't call it like what's a match.
Well, and I think the biggest difference is like, at least for me, in jiu-jitsu, like the whole point is like to be technical, to out control your opponent and to like almost embarrass them with your technique. Like you should be able to hold them in that arm bar and leverage the pressure when you feel like it. And obviously like matches will get heated and, submissions will come on quickly and people will get accidentally injured. But by nature, the intent is not to hurt somebody. Right. Whereas in MMA, it's like, I'm going to punch you in your nose. I'm going to punch you in your belly. I'm going to hit you as hard as I can to hurt you. So that way you stop. Yeah.
Which is crazy about the amateur because they can call it amateur, but they're still swinging hard as fuck to the face. It's still full contact.
Yeah. Very full contact. And it was weird when I started, this is going to date me, but like when I started doing amateur MMA, they had a 10 count and you couldn't punch to the head when the opponent was grounded.
Okay.
So like it was even more padded, right? So like I remember in one of my fights, I knocked the guy down in the first round and instead of jumping on him.
Oh, you can't grapple?
You can grapple, but they give the guy a 10 count because he got knocked down.
Wait, hold on. So
exactly. It's a very weird.
So if you rock the guy and it's a clean, like you have to rock him clean, I'm assuming, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like boxing, they fought from the punch. Mm-hmm. You can't go in and grapple. At
the time, that was the rule. Okay. That you had to allow for the 10 count and then you could run in.
But count 10 and then you charge him.
The ref would do a 10 count, make sure the guy was good, and then you could continue the fight.
Wow, that's wild.
So it was just weird.
Yeah. Would they stand him up too?
Yeah.
So they'll stand them up. So it's not even like you got position on the ground.
Yeah. So it was a weird rule set. They've since changed it. It's been a while since it's been fixed. But yeah, it was a crazy experience. It was the best from a martial arts standpoint, like the best moment of my life.
You continued to train like when you were training up in Tallahassee. I'm assuming you moved there and you moved back down, right?
Yeah. So I graduated. Had to leave. I always called Tallahassee like adult Disney World. It was crazy. There's nobody over the age of 35. No kids. Bunch of bars and restaurants. Bro. Tallahassee. So I mean, if you've been there, but even just from the school side, there's just so much to do there. It's really kind of like a playground.
Yeah, man.
So I graduated, came back down, and at that point, I had just come off of a fight. So I was still in pretty good shape. I mean, I'm in shit shape now considering, but just started bouncing around gyms throughout Tallahassee, throughout Miami, and kind of was like, Ronin-ing through gyms, just
that's a good
open mats.
Adjective,
I always, compared that to some extent, like, not just again, not having the money for a membership until I got my big boy job, but like, B, just not really finding a specific spot.
Yeah.
Training jiu-jitsu for a little while.
There was a lot of spots. There is a lot of spots. It's kind of, it's got to be hard to choose like where you want to train down here because there's some really good gyms here, like MMA wise. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I had trained at Freestyle Fighting Academy for a little bit. I had trained at Evolution MMA for a little bit. I had popped into MMA Masters once or twice, and also just with people that I knew in the industry, like meeting up and just hitting pads, and the people at UFC gym at the time, a lot of the guys at Young Tigers that were at UFC gym.
Young
at the
Tigers,
time.
Bro, I haven't heard that name in a while. That's a Diga, right?
Yeah. So that's a pretty hardcore.
Yeah,
that's I would not recommend that place for
like a hobbyist.
Beginners. Yeah, for hobbyists. You go in there because you're serious.
But it changed names, right? It was Young Tigers, but it changed now. It's no longer that, right?
I think it's the Young Tigers Foundation. I don't train there right now, so I really am not 100% certain.
Right.
But
it still exists.
Yes.
It didn't change major names or anything like that.
Yeah, it definitely still exists.
Yeah. That guy was like, he came out of Cuba, the kickboxer.
I believe so, yes.
I had a crazy record.
Yeah, I'll admit I don't know too much about his record, but I've heard, the legend of Tigre, and I've cornered with him. I've met him, many times. Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely passionate. He cares a lot about the sport.
Yeah, he has a lot of knowledge.
So he's a lot of knowledge. So he's an interesting guy to know in the industry. But
did you fight when you came back down?
No, I only fought in Tallahassee. I got went right into the adult world.
Yeah, I
right
get you.
after
You graduated, you got loans, bro. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. But I was really focusing on jiu-jitsu when I came back.
Oh, okay.
So I had found a couple gyms, was training for a few years, and then I stopped training at that gym, and kind of heard the whispers about Carmichael and Calienes teaching out of the garage.
Yeah.
And again, I had rolled with Carmichael at this time already. I had known about them. I knew that they were legit.
Yeah.
And I followed the Instagram. Like, I knew that they were actively doing something.
Right.
And so I was like, yo, let me get in on some of this training. So they were kind enough to let me pop in, and just coincidentally, right before they opened the gym, I had kind of seen the space. And so they were telling me like, oh, we're thinking about doing this. And, this is kind of what's coming up. I was like, hell yeah. Like, this is a great idea.
And how did you get into coaching? Like, you're coaching now?
So coaching, I mean, I'll start off by a huge disclaimer, which I think is important, is like, I have no accolades. I have absolutely no trophies, no shiny star that proves that I'm a good coach. I have none of that, right? Like, I have very amateur record. I've just been super passionate about this my entire life. So I just do the best that I can, but I by no means am anything special,
I think that,
right?
I don't think that you have to be, and this is just my opinion, I don't think you have to be a world champion fighter, because maybe you're a world champion fighter, but you're not good at coaching.
Sure.
And I think it's a different type of mindset in order to be a good coach. It requires, like, that was one of the things I was going to ask you, is like, you have to shift your point of view kind of when you coach somebody, because you're not thinking about how you're going to develop.
Yeah.
So it's kind of more of an analytical mind than just fighting.
I agree 100%. And
you could be like John Donaher, dude. John
Donaher. that would be a great compliment. But no, I mean, I love this stuff, right? So a couple reasons is like, when I was teaching or when I was coaching in Tallahassee, I was also in the gym training all the time. So I was just there. So I'd make a couple bucks teaching a striking class, teaching a couple personals.
Yeah.
And I was just in this space already. So it was just natural. And I mean, I was a shithead coach then too. So, I mean, I was trying my best, but just there. And then, I got really lucky that Carmichael, I had started training with him officially. Yeah. And, I have taught striking and kickboxing and MMA in a bunch of different places. So I have been teaching for a while. Yeah. So for better or for worse, I've been able to at least like test out methods and kind of see, what works and what doesn't. And,
which is important.
Trying to be as objective as possible about what I know and what I don't know and learning more.
Well, that's really important. Like, I think that you come in with that mindset that you don't have those accolades that you mentioned, right? But it allows you to kind of come in with a scientific approach and test possibilities, because you're not coming in with this mindset of, oh, I have all this experience that I need to, and I know what I'm doing.
I've seen other people in the space that are really good at what they do too, and that's kind of how they approach it. So like your education, your academics should speak for itself, right? And maintaining that humility is important in my opinion. But
super, dude, especially in coaching. Yeah, you got to be able to be like, okay, maybe I'm doing this a little bit wrong, and that's the only way you're going to develop into coaching correctly, in my opinion. I think
which is why I think Carmichael and Calienes and myself connected so well, because I knew that they were about that life in terms of like learning and the like empirically testing techniques and theories and concepts and things like that. And so I was just really lucky that they, trusted me enough to be able to try and teach this class at the gym.
But I think it's good because you guys get to bounce off these ideas.
Yeah.
Off each other.
Yeah. And the good thing about fighting and combat in general is like, you can't lie. There's no lying when it comes to like actual combat. The technique works or it doesn't work. Right. And you're going to see it or you're not going to see it. Like, so to me, it's very, it's beautiful. Yeah, so man. You can be subtle, you can be quiet, but like you see some monsters on the gym that are on the mats that don't look, they look very unassuming, but will strangle you to death, right? So anyways, I just thought that it was really cool. That's how their thought process was, especially now they've really kind of done a deep dive into this ecological approach.
Yeah.
I know that you guys have had them on, so
Yeah.
you've been able to talk to them about that. And
Well, we talked to them. It's funny, man. This is actually pretty funny because before they were in the ecological approach, they were really into studying tape and like analyzing and breaking it down, and they had like this whole approach into it. I actually talked to this with Carmichael, that it's like he used to have this approach that he used to study tape and break it down, all that stuff, and then now he's going completely to the other side. Just so that's like he jumped to the other side and started doing it that way. So when we had him on, he was talking about how he did it that way. Yeah. But now that they do that training, that type of that ecological training, I think it's great for the way that you think during like a match.
100%.
I can't say fighting because I don't fight, but
it is it translates really well. And so like I said, I've been teaching for a few years now, but I'm very open to the idea of like, there's better ways to do this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And even I have had, some difficulty like letting go of some of the old. You're used to it from a tradition standpoint, and it's, it's just how you learned, and it's how the greats learned. And so like there's some resistance to that change. But again, being able to prove the work, and be empirical, which
you did recently because you just had somebody win a fight.
Well, that, so yes, we had our first ground game theory mixed martial arts win, which has made me very, very happy. I was really proud of George, who he fought his ass off. But I mean, we've worked some of that stuff, which I'm happy that it's starting to translate. But George just showed balls. I mean, I told him this right after the fight ended. I've told him this in the gym, but like, you can be technical and you can know technique and you can know all the things, but like when you get punched in the face and that person's trying to knock you out, like it's easy to see whether you're there and you're battle tested and ready, or if you're not, if this isn't for you.
It's for sure changes that first fight in front of people. I can imagine that being in front of people and getting hit first, it's like, because if you do a jiu-jitsu match and it's your first jiu-jitsu match, you're gonna get nervous. Imagine when it's inside a cage and somebody's trying to punch you in the face.
Well, the consequences are just so much more drastic, so much more dire. So anyways, George, he had a rough first round. I think it happens to a lot of fighters.
Did you tell him anything after that first round?
Yeah. I said, are you here? Are you with me? Like making sure that he's still kind of able to process information.
Bro. Like George is like,
so stone faced.
Like he's hard to. He's a super nice guy, but like he's stone faced.
Yeah, very hard to get a read from him in training. It's hard to I always am like, hey, are you getting this? Or is it sinking in?
Yeah.
But yeah, and so after that first round, I think it was an adrenaline dump. You're not, this is the first time under the bright lights. It's very loud. So it's overwhelming.
Yeah, man. Especially after an adrenaline dump too.
Exactly. And so it happens a lot in first, debut fighters. Is like the first round is kind of just like chaos, right? So, he survives that. We get him on the stool, and I can tell that he's paying attention. He can hear me. He's not like rocked or anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's it. That's all he's got. He did it. Everything he did was as hard as he could.
Yeah.
So what's coming. Like, go after him.
Right.
And that's not really like super technical advice, but just trying to get him a little bit more.
But that's
motivated.
What he needed, dude. I think that at that point in that first fight, like
just remembering, like, you're allowed to be violent,
right?
Like that. I try and preach that a lot. Like, be violent. We're always so tempered in training and trying to take care of each other. Like, this is the one time that you're allowed to physically harm somebody and not go to jail.
Go to jail.
Do it. Know. So the second round he came out, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, dude, I saw how he came out in the second round. It was wild.
And from the corner, I'm holding onto the cage, looking up, and I can see in his face he's fucking pissed. Like he finally
he flipped the switch.
Kind of broke. He broke into it and did great.
That's such a good point that you make. That like in training, we're always trying to be like that. You have to have this temperament, that kind of calm, because you don't want to hurt your training partners. But then when you actually get to a fight, an MMA fight, you have to flip that switch. Yeah. It's got to be difficult for a first time.
100%. And again, George is a really nice guy, right? So I think for most people it's hard to like be that violent to somebody, right? So once you get that first taste of it, then what it's like, and you can more easily tap into it. But we really advocate like light tech sparring, very playful stuff like that. But there are times if you're training for a camp and you haven't been tested, with that higher level of pressure and, the adrenaline pumping, and that guy's trying to like put you down, you're not going to be 100% ready from a experience standpoint for the fight.
Right.
So
right.
that is part of the, is part of the formula to an extent.
Yeah, man. I think that at least if it's that first fight, I think it's probably breaking down like, oh, you got to do this technically. It might be a little bit harder for a debut fighter. You know what I mean? Because in the moment, the emotions are going everywhere. Just kind of refocusing them will probably be the goal. Obviously, that's a broad statement.
Sure.
It's not, maybe if somebody comes in, he's automatically just a killer.
Yeah.
And he has it in his mind, you can break down the technique. But I think just broadly, that's probably the best approach.
And everybody's different,
right.
to your point. So some people are violent as hell, and it's more about like controlling that. And like you have to
in
not
the gym,
see red, right?
Calm down.
Well, that, and also like you can be too aggressive,
right?
Just blowing your load and losing your cardio in the second round.
Right.
It can be that you leave yourself open because you're so angry that you're swinging your shots a little too hard, and it's easy to tell. So everybody's different, but you have to. That's the beauty of MMA is like, you can be short, you can be tall, long arms, short arms, there's people that fight with one arm.
Yeah.
And they
true,
still do really well.
Yeah. There's a wrestler guy that has one arm. Like he has his complete chest out, blown out.
So, I mean, it's a beautiful sport. I can't even remember where we started on this, topic, but I love it. I think it's such an amazing thing. There's so many different aspects to it.
Yeah, dude.
You can obsess over judo for a little bit and then focus on,
I think that's what makes it
jiu-jitsu.
interesting, dude, because also seeing like these fighters, if you watch the fights or you watch MMA, you're seeing these fighters evolve into like full athletes. You know what I mean? Because GSP, when he started, he wasn't like great at wrestling, if I recall correctly. He wasn't great at wrestling, but then he got really good, started training, and then that like formed his game.
Yeah, he's an anomaly in that, he had that champion mindset from day one, and was obsessive over learning all these things. And I mean, he's like a gymnast, a gymnastic expert, so he's mastered movement, which I think
he was one of the first to do that too.
To use gymnastics? Or?
Yeah, like to think about movement in that way.
Very much so. I think he's one of the first like refined mixed martial artists. Matt Hughes maybe before him, but like Matt Hughes was really, wrestle and just punch the fuck out of you, right? So
that was that era was like that.
Like,
he had the jiu-jitsu area at the beginning, like
exactly.
The first UFC, but then after that, it started with the wrestlers and the ground and pound. So it's like he was the first one to come in and bring in that holistic approach.
And just you could see the technique like shine, through his performances.
Right.
He would hit just a beautiful double. He would hit a Superman punch.
Like really good wrestlers too.
Exactly.
Man. Good strikers.
Well, and that's the scaffolding now for like modern MMA.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You as a kid are learning everything all at the same time.
100%. Yeah.
Which is, something going back to the fun that I'm having at Ground Game Theory is like, it kind of is the tradition that you teach a Muay Thai class and then you teach a jiu-jitsu class and then you teach wrestling and then like, okay, you spar and all these elements, but like, how are you really connecting the dots between your judo into your top game ground control?
That's such a good point.
How are you
like that connection between the martial arts? It's gotta be like, how do you teach that? How do you kind of connect in the dots? Because connecting wrestling, connecting the striking, like knowing when to take those opportunities, that's got to be a cornerstone of teaching MMA, I assume.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you can shoot a double all day long, but if somebody's kneeing you or punching you in the face while you're trying to do it, and you've never experienced that, and you don't have that adaptation to the wrestling to prepare for strikes, right? Yeah. Then it'll never happen,
right?
Again, it's why I'm really excited about Ground Game, because they're challenging me to be a better coach, and from the standpoint of like, we're learning this new approach. It seems to have a lot of traction. There's numbers behind it, but like more so for me, it's like it gives me another avenue to think about how I teach the classes and see, anecdotally, how are the results playing with the students that I'm teaching.
Yeah.
Which I feel like it's working. The good thing is the way that I was teaching in the past was kind of similar. I definitely think it's been refined by understanding this ecological approach a lot better.
Right.
And troubleshooting with Alex Calienes and, debating and, playing devil's advocate against it. And like that, all of that is welcomed there. Like we want to try and, contrast opinions, whereas you go to other places and it's like, you don't tell the teacher no, or that's wrong or right. So it's a lot of fun for me to kind of like start thinking about it like that and coming up with new ways to connect the striking to the wrestling or the judo to the grappling and, seeing results. And being able to analyze like modern MMA, like the latest fights, and seeing those concepts, you know, at the top, you know, the highest level, and being able to kind of translate them down into the class.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just a nerd for all this stuff. I'm not saying that I'm doing it right or anything, but I'm having a lot of fun trying.
But I think that you saying that you're a nerd or that you're really into it or you study the art, I think that's probably the first aspect that's most important. You know what I mean?
Yeah, passion.
A passion for it and the ability to analyze. Like, I think you need, obviously, the passion. You need the ability to analyze fights, and you also need the ability to communicate it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it seems like you have those three together. You know what I mean? And I think if you just work at it, it's going to be something that you're going to be really good at.
100%. And I feel like, you know, martial arts is such an important part of my life. It really, like, the building the confidence, right? Mm-hmm. Going from that bullied kid that couldn't handle it to, like, feeling very, very confident in myself from the standpoint of, like, I'm going to be able to hold my ground against anybody. I might not win, but I certainly am not going to say no. Right. Like, I'll at least go in there with the confidence that I'm going to do my best.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, that's translated into like analytical and critical thinking skills that I've used for work. It's helped just with a whole new perspective for my life. That's really helped me, in my opinion, to be more successful than
especially
I
with the confidence,
would have been.
Bro.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You know, just being able to speak to people. You know, you would think that that's such a simple thing, but like,
no, it makes sense.
Speaking on a podcast, you know, it's tough. It can be nerve wracking for people, but like, I always will joke that like, well, I fought in a cage in a stadium with thousands of people looking at me, like,
in your underwear.
In my underwear. So like, if I can do that, then I can talk at this thing, or if I can do that, then I can accomplish this. You know, everything it pales in comparison.
Yeah, it kind of like normalizes the stuff that you're gonna go through, whether it be in a boardroom or whatever the case may be. But if you've done that, it makes everything seem a lot easier.
Exactly. So it's been so beneficial to me that like I think it's important to like continue that down the line. So like I want to teach people, and I want to stay in the world because I want to evangelize for other people to do jiu-jitsu and to see other people enjoying the sport and the martial art the way that I have. You know, it really, like, nothing makes me happier than seeing somebody that kind of started off similar to me, where they were shy or insecure or whatever.
No athletic ability.
Another great thing, like not thinking that they can do it because they're not athletically gifted or whatever the case may be. And then coming into a sport like mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu or whatever, name your martial art, right? And coming out from it feeling better about themselves and being able to do better things. So like,
that's gotta be the most rewarding thing, dude. Like to have somebody that came from no athletic ability, no confidence, and then I mean, having a world champion would be great, right? You got a world champion, it's awesome, but seeing on the day-to-day that those people that come in with no confidence, no athletic ability, kind of not believing that they can do it, kind of scared of it, and then over the months they just become a different person that's I don't want to say productive, but also but I mean productive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of like emotionally stable. That has to be more rewarding than having a world champion, you know?
It is extremely rewarding. And the thing is, I've seen it so many times, and it's not about me or anything I'm doing. It's just that it is so overwhelmingly beneficial that it can't like not help right now. Granted, you're going to be sore, you know, there are injuries that come and, you know, all this stuff, but like, I wouldn't trade any of that for what I've learned and, you know, for the experience that I've had, you know, and I wake up every morning sore and, you know, it takes me 5 minutes to get going, but like, I'm okay. You know, it was worth the trade-off.
Yeah, you wake up with your ankles like, what the fuck? As soon as you put your legs on the floor, you're like, whoa.
Exactly. I need a solid 5 minutes to like get officially warm, but yeah, I mean, seeing
you gotta warm up to get out of bed.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, seeing girls, you know, joining jiu-jitsu and wrestling, like I think that's amazing. I think it's so cool to see that. I admire a lot of the people that are like that are, you know, that stereotypically you wouldn't think would be a part of it, and they're trying something new and challenging themselves. Like I really admire that stuff.
And challenging themselves in something that's so difficult like MMA or like jiu-jitsu. Like it's one thing to challenge yourself doing a sport, which is great. You can do it in any other sport and challenge yourself playing, I don't know, racquetball.
Yeah, pickleball, you know, whatever.
Pickleball, which is a new thing.
Yeah. Which I haven't tried yet. I gotta try it out.
No, like that's great. It's great. Or going to the gym, that's great, you know, but I think that there's a level of difficulty that comes with combat sports that other sports don't have. And that's just my opinion, you know?
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think it's it's an ego crusher, right? Like,
yeah, dude.
you can lose at soccer, but I can still kick your ass. You know, like that's always, everybody subconsciously has that kind of thought process,
true,
right?
It's
so
true.
when you get down to it and it's jujitsu and it's like, you know, you're big and strong and you're 220 pounds and you're ripped with muscle and some dude just latches himself to your neck and chokes you to, you know, lifelessness.
And you see that a lot.
There's a
man.
lot of ego that's involved with that. So it's tough. It's tough for people to stick it out and eat that humble pie and understand that that's exactly how you get better.
You got to be kind of a little bit of a masochist of it too. Like,
a little bit,
you got to be a little bit, to stay a long time or a lifetime doing martial arts. You kind of be like not that you enjoy getting fucked up, but it's like a motivation.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Well, again, once you stick in it for so long, which like, that's how I feel. Like I don't think I'm good. I've gotten beaten up so much that like, I know the pitfalls of where that might happen or that might happen. So
yeah.
I lost where I was even going with it, but
no, that's fine.
But just it's an ego crusher. So it's hard for people to really stick it out. But that humility, that ability to understand that losing is that's where I guess I was going, is that like when you do it long enough, you know that the losing is actually how you're improving yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you're troubleshooting what the problems are.
Which is crazy, dude, because it's such it's such a counterintuitive feeling, losing, thinking that that's what's making you better. But martial arts is just like that. And
that translates into my everyday life.
Dude.
You don't get a client that you want, you know, you learn what did I mess up on? What can I do for the next time to be better at it? You know, the examples are limitless, but being able to kind of look at everything that you do from the perspective of like a martial artist, to me, has been invaluable.
Yeah, no, there's nothing that can really teach. I mean, I say nothing, but for me, there's nothing that could teach you humility, because I think humility allows you to make better decisions in the long run. You know what I mean? Because you don't have your ego trying to like pushing you towards a bad decision.
Exactly.
You're like, well, maybe I got to take my licks on this one and figure it out a different way or get better or whatever the case may be. And that's literally what jiu-jitsu has done for me and my family. My wife trains too. It's the same thing.
I've rolled with your wife. She's a monster.
Dude.
She beats me up in the 12 o'clock class.
Pray for me.
I can see where you might be coming with some back pains and stuff like that. But, no, yeah. So I'm a huge advocate for it. I think everybody should try it. I think you should get into something. And again, I hate to continuously plug GGT, but there's a reason why I'm there, and Seoul as well, right? Like the environment's really good there. The culture is great. The people that are running it, like they have good morals and ethics behind what they're trying to do, and like which is important. And there's other jiu-jitsu gyms that like don't have that. Money grab, or it's an ego stroke. You know, they're the super sensei master that you have to respect, and they're the ultimate deity of rightness. Which,
that's a good way to put it.
I think that jiu-jitsu, you respect somebody for that skill, but they're just a human being, just like anybody else, right? Which again, Carmichael and Calienes are very good at that, and letting the results speak for itself. Right. You know, you're good if your students do. You're a good teacher if your students win in competitive matches. It's very cut and dry. Right.
I think that's a good way to evaluate it. I think that old guard of that you were speaking of, that they're the deity and they have all their. I think that old guard is starting to die off now. People are starting to realize it. You know, and I don't know how it is in MMA, if that's like that in MMA. Because it seems like that's more like a jiu-jitsu martial artist type thing.
I think it's a human thing. I think once you get into a position of power, like I'm not a scientist or an academic.
You're not? Get the fuck out, bro.
I know. But from what I understand, in certain, an example like science is like people found their theory and, this is their life's work. And someone comes along and says like, actually you never really thought about this, but now we've adapted and our thinking is like this. And it's very hard to resist the urge to go, no, that was my idea. I'm right.
Yeah. Especially when people have been doing it for years.
Exactly.
For years.
So that, I think it translates to everybody. So MMA, you definitely find people that are like that, back in the day, they used to be the best of whatever, but like, are you teaching the same thing that you were teaching 30 years ago? Like the sport's completely, it evolves every day.
Right.
So being able to find a place that is as little ego as possible.
Which a lot of people approach about like, oh, no ego. There's no ego. There's a lot of ego.
100%.
Like it's like hidden.
Well, it's like the competitive ego, right? Like there's a difference between your human ego and like the desire to want to beat people, you know, competitively. I think that you should want to be, you know, upset when you lose and, you know, want, you know, be thinking about that, you know, use the mental fuel is what I use.
That's
what
a
I say
healthy
a
way,
lot,
but that's
right?
a healthy
Exactly.
ego. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's healthy.
So you use that loss or, you know, the fear that somebody's going to be better than you and you train harder and, you know, that's good.
Yeah, it's a balance. You gotta balance it out.
But yeah, having that ego in the gym, thinking that you're the shit.
If you have that ego and you think you're the shit, you're probably at the wrong spot, dude.
Yeah, exactly. You're either too good for the school and you need to find, you know, you need to level up your circle, you know, of competition, or you're delusional, right?
Right. Yeah, because if you're getting smoked and you still think that you're like the man, yeah, then you're probably delusional.
So that's why I love where I'm training now because I'm getting worked all the time.
Tell me about it, bro.
I always say that, you know, I'm working to get back into competition shape and, you know, jiu-jitsu and MMA. And
are you gonna compete in MMA?
That's the goal.
Oh,
that's the goal.
Dude.
You know, I've been really slacking in terms of like me being in athletic, you know, peak shape, but you know, again, luckily running into Soul, you know, via Carmichael and Kianush and knowing Danny and all these guys that run Soul, you know, I'm on their pressure program. So I've been seeing like really big improvements in terms of like strength.
Yeah.
My cardio is definitely better from just the way that we're learning at
so you're training MMA, you're doing the pressure, and you're obviously doing jiu-jitsu as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
And how do you fucking rest? Because you also have a full-time fucking job.
Yeah, I mean, so there's good and bad about having a full-time, like your own business.
Yeah.
Is like all of your problems are your own problems.
Right.
So like nobody else is gonna do the thing that I have to do tonight besides me.
Which is good and bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that I do have a relatively flexible schedule from the standpoint of like there are times where I can make it to the 12 o'clock class where if I was working a corporate 9 to 5, I wouldn't have been able to ever make that, right?
Yeah, I get that.
So there's benefits and drawbacks. I mean, I think I can be real with myself and say like, you know, prior to this kind of new inspiration, you know, motivation to want to get back into it, like I definitely was slacking and I could have made time for it. You know, like I need to go run after this podcast, right? Like I have to just slot that time out accordingly. After this? Something, yeah. I'm gonna probably get some cardio in after this. But the point being is like if you really want something, you're gonna find a way to do it.
Right.
So that's kind of been the mentality now. Is like I need to cut out the bullshit, stop slacking.
Yeah.
And just organize myself.
When did you decide to do that? Like, are you actively? I mean, yeah, you're obviously actively trying to get back into shape to fight and get into fight shape, right? But what do you have like a projected time that you're thinking about going back in?
The goal is to get down to the competitive weight that I was feeling good at, which is 185, which is definitely a long road for me.
Yeah.
And then once I get there, that's when I'll feel a lot better about like, now is 6 months out from this event or this jiu-jitsu competition.
Okay, so you broke it down by weight first and then
just, you know, getting myself mentally in the zone, getting my time organized, things like that.
Yeah.
But you know, seeing the guys at the gym compete, that's definitely like a huge motivator, you know.
I get you. It gives you like that itch.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the gym crushed it at ADCC Orlando. You know, and
with not a lot of fighters.
Not a lot of competitors, and they really did a good job. And I think, like, again, kudos to Carmichael and Kianush because they had done a competition, you know, a tournament in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, we were, as coaches, you know, we're kind of focused on, like, getting the class structure straight and making sure that, you know, the gym is running and not necessarily having that mindset of, like, oh, this competition's coming up. We need to prep for that.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, we may have gone to a few tournaments, like not the best organized in terms of like getting the students ready for the point system and the mentality behind it. And so I think there was a huge shift.
Yeah,
the learning curve for sure. But I think they understood like we need to also focus on this. So they took a hard shift and proved that in this ADCC, like, okay, now we're doing something right. You know, there's noticeable, tangible difference between the same students that were there and kind of, you know, still good, nothing against anybody, right? But just the mental organization of like, you get points like this, like you shouldn't do this specific technique. That, you know, there's time factors that come into play. So having that competitive mindset is really important.
Which is crazy when you think about ADCC because of the time factor, like you're saying the points come in at a certain time. that you have to make a shift in your mind while you're competing. That's rough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, all these nuanced rules, it requires that mental preparation and the game preparation beforehand. So they took that Orlando competition very seriously, and these guys were in there getting the work done, and it shows. So between that, I mean, we've got a few other guys on our side that are doing the MMA stuff that are looking to pick up fights. So like,
oh shit, cool.
Really excited about that. More so than myself even.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because you're kind of, spearheading that program right now.
Yeah. It's exciting. We just announced that we're bringing in Elvin Espinoza, who's a PFL professional fighter. I mean, absolute monster. So he's going to be a huge asset to the team and to the gym as well. So yeah, I'm excited about the MMA program there. I'm excited about the martial arts program in general, just the jiu-jitsu. Anything that I can do, from a passion standpoint that helps grow the community from that area. Yeah. I love doing it.
So how do you, like, you were talking about it right now, like structuring classes. How do you approach structuring your classes?
So, we've been having a lot of conversations around class structure and what we're teaching in class and things of that nature. So prior to that academic decision to kind of change things up a little bit, I was still doing a lot of like live scenarios.
Which makes sense for MMA. Like
100%.
Like it makes more sense to me to do it that way for MMA.
Yeah, definitely. And striking is just such a different mentality than jiu-jitsu. I think that there's a different way your brain processes striking versus grappling. Right. So being able to kind of understand that, but then also putting the different, layering the different aspects of it.
He got you confused.
A little bit. So it's my situational awareness.
You're like, what is he trying to fucking rob me, this motherfucker? Yeah, I saw your eyes shift and you were like, what the fuck's going on, dude?
Yeah, I was analyzing my information. No, but yeah, being able to layer the different aspects of the art is really important, for a good MMA program. So
yeah, man, it's got to be. So is there a way that you balance that kind of stuff, like the striking with the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu? Because they have so many components when it comes to fighting and things that we don't take into, I wouldn't take into consideration teaching, like distance control and all that stuff. Like putting all that, how do you create like a balance that you make sure that the fighter comes out well-rounded?
I think there's kind of two ways about it. There's like the ideal theoretical approach where it's like this kind of works in all scenarios, for the most part, always. Yeah. Which is like engaging an opponent, right? The bell rings and you start standing in front of this guy. Like, how do you start probing? How do you start reading information from this person? How do you start picking up,
Let's investigate
the
it
data?
first.
A little bit, yeah. You could have a strategy where it's like, I'm going to go balls to the wall for the first 2 minutes. Right. So there's whatever it is, there's some sort of engagement process where you're getting ready you're getting ready. Yeah. Then there's the exchange process in open air. There's the exchange process on the cage. Right. There's open takedowns. There's cage takedowns or wall work, stuff like that. And then you get into the ground and pound. Right. So like those are kind of different like categories. Right. And the submissions
I'm assuming that it's segmented even more than that.
100%. Yeah. 100%. But so you have that theoretical approach where it's like, this is kind of the environment that I'm going to be in today. And you can jump from one to one, from one to another. You can go, we're going to start with engagements, then we're going to go to the wall, then we're going to go to the ground. So you can structure a class any way you want, kind of with those elements. Yeah. And then me personally, I structure my classes based off of the students that are in it. Right. So like, I can look and see that, okay, like as an aggregate, we're slacking in the distance management aspect, right? Okay. So we're going to focus on that, and everything that we're going to do is kind of be scaffolded around getting better at that. Right. And then we'll test it in sparring or open, gameplay. And then we analyze a lot of footage every time that we do sparring, which, by the way, guys, if you're MMA guys, come out to Ground Game Theory. There you go. Sparring, open mat, Sundays at 1 p.m. So we record all that footage. I'm constantly analyzing student footage and my own footage and, trying to find the holes there, and then taking that information and going back kind of to square one and going, okay, we're going to focus on this today.
So it sounds like it's like, so to my understanding, there'll be days that you're trying to do like a holistic approach, that you're trying to get everything encompassed in that class. But then there's going to be days that you're going to be like, we need to focus on distance control or wall wrestling or cage wrestling, and just take that class depending on what the class needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally you'd want to try and spread it as much as possible, so that way you get a holistic lesson for that day, and you're able to like, okay, I worked on my jab entry into my single legs, and then that guy runs to the wall, so I was able to train on the wall a little bit, and then I worked my, I ran the pipe and took him down, and
kind of like scenario from start to finish.
Yeah, something that where it's okay. Like I remember that training that day, and now I can kind of run that from A to Z and finish an opponent.
Oh, that's cool.
There should always be some sort of like goal as to like finishing the fight, which is the same thing in jiu-jitsu. It's like you're working to a submission. Right. So like being able to start in open air and work your way through a chain of logic that gets you to, a knockout combination, a ground and pound scenario where the person's immobilized and can't move, or a submission. Right. So that ideally we do something comprehensive like that. Sometimes we'll kind of narrow down and focus on one aspect, but again, it's dependent on who's in the class, what the skill level is. Are they hobbyists? Are they pros?
Right.
Like gotta be, everything's very nuanced.
That's got to be pretty complex to kind of like balance that off when you have like hobbyists and you have fighters, the competitive fighters, like balancing out what one person needs and one. I mean, you would have to separate a little bit the class or just partner them up correctly. Yeah, partnering up correctly. I think the cool thing about the ecological approach and just this game approach is that you have different layers of difficulty and different variables that kind of go into things. So you can start everybody at level 1, and then based on who's picking up that understanding well, can move on to level 2, which just adds a level of complexity to the first game anyways. Yeah. So you're not ready for this yet. Like just stay working at level 1 and finish getting that game down. You can be a pro and still get benefit from that, even if it's not as complex. Right. And then we scale these games and these scenarios up more and more to get closer and closer to that live sparring scenario that is eventually going to be your live round. How do you feel about sparring? Like sparring, I love it. I mean, like, how do you feel? Because there's this school of thought that sparring isn't great. When we're talking about fighters, let's get into the right context. So we're talking about professional fighters leading up to a fight. Some say it's not good to spar. Some say they like to spar hard before fights in their camps. What do you think about that? I think that there's definitely, an emergence of like understanding that like brain trauma is not good, and CTE is bad, and we should work to be as safe as possible while we're training. Right. So I definitely think that that's important. And I think it has been neglected for decades and decades. And so now it's finally what's been neglected? The sparring hard? The idea that like your brain can only take so much damage, and like it's very sensitive, and if you care about yourself, you should really keep that in mind. Yeah. Right. So from a hobbyist standpoint, you should almost never be getting, punched in the face hard. If anything, you're having fun. Like this is not meant for you to unless that's what you're coming for, right? You want that like Fight Club-esque experience. You can find it, right? Fight Club. So when you're a competitor and you're getting ready for a fight, I think that it is important to have as much technical and play sparring as possible. You try and keep the speed up as much as you can, but it's important to have good teammates and good partners that you trust that are going to be able to maintain their power levels. So like you can get hardcore with it and push each other. And like, I mean, you can throw up after these types of rounds, but it's not going to be physically damaging to your brain. Right. So those are very important. I would say that that's like 90% of the time. There's a shift that way. Like there's a shift to thinking that way of going to sparring technically. Yeah. When leading up, there's a huge shift, unless you're Sean Strickland, but it's like a huge shift towards that. But I mean, his methodology is crazy, but it works for him, right? Yeah, and he's actually, I mean, I have not checked this myself, but from what I understand, they have mouthpieces that have, telemetrics in them. No shit. So you can test these UFC fighters to see who's getting hit a lot, and he's apparently not getting hit very much. So like his style is working for him, right? Yeah. And I'm sure he's sparring relatively light. Because of a fucking mouthpiece they're getting. I think so. I might be wrong, but I think that's how they're getting some sort of data. But anyways, so that play sparring, keeping the speed as fast as you can, maintaining the competitive nature to it, but ultimately understanding like we're not going to be hitting each other hard to the head, and like if a head kick comes your way and somebody stops it and is very gentle, like
don't rush in and assume that you would have just eaten that kick. Like, you need to respect that, like, okay, like you got me. Like,
you're not gonna be leaving your face out.
Exactly. And just resetting and understanding, like, again, keeping everything in context.
Yeah.
And then especially for amateur fighters and people that are new, like, there definitely needs to be at least 1 or 2 sparring days in the camp. Let's say it's a 10 or 12 week camp,
right? Where
you're like, today we're sparring hard. Okay. Like, we're gonna go. Again, we're not trying to knock each other out in the head, but we're gonna work the body hard. We're gonna work the legs, and it is gonna be more intense.
Yeah.
And trying to replicate the scenario of the fight, having people there, recording, screaming. Again, just trying to make it as lifelike as possible to the real fight.
Yeah.
And then another version of it, which is kind of in between both of them, is like working things like where you're fatigued already and you're going against somebody who's fresh, and like they're not beating you up, but they're manhandling you because you just don't have the energy. And so like
a king of the mat.
Exactly. Yeah. We used to call it Shark Tanks, Bull in the Ring. Yeah. There's plenty of names. Everybody knows that it sucks if you've been a part of it, right? So like having that mentality of like continuing to keep going even if you're fatigued.
Yeah.
So between the technical sparring, the fatigue sparring, and then the very rare but important live sparring where you're going pretty hard.
Yeah.
That's kind of the formula in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you use the hard sparring for like, I mean, I know you analyze everything, but do you consider that a very important part of the analysis of a fighter, that hard sparring? Because there's got to be a difference between the technical sparring and the hard sparring, at least the way that they would react to a hard hit shot.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. I think if you technique spar enough and if you've gotten enough hard sparring experience, then you can translate it back into the tech sparring a lot easier. So like, you don't need to be sparring hard all the time. Yeah. And if you've been in a fight, and this is something that like Max Holloway, for example, he espouses, which is like, I already know how to fight.
Yeah.
I already know what that situation is like. So like,
yeah, I agree with that. When you're at that level.
Exactly. So as long as you can confidently say to yourself, like, I know what the fire's like and I've been in it and it's not going to phase me when the time comes.
Yeah.
Then you can rely a little bit more on the tech sparring and the live drills and the live games.
That makes sense, man.
And sharpening the tools, which is another thing that I think is really important. But if you've never done it and you're trying out for a fight and you've never been rocked before and you've never like had that adrenaline dump of like, oh shit, this guy's like trying to fuck me up. Like,
right. You need that pressure.
You need that.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, compared to back in the day, even from when I did it, when I was training at TFW, we had a head instructor because he was the owner of the gym.
Yeah.
And he did a really good job. And, no disrespect to him, but like we were a bunch of fighters in that gym that were kind of just all working with each other. There was no like, we're running this today. Like, it was a lot of open sparring and we fucked each other up, which these are some of my best friends.
Yeah.
So, there's no love lost or there's no hate there, but we were going at it.
Yeah.
And even before that, 20 years ago, you think about like Ken Shamrock, like those guys were literally fucking each other up and knocking each other out.
Bro.
What do you mean the one?
The school in Iowa. What was it called? It's dude, it's
I mean, the Lions Den was Shamrock.
Yeah, the Lions Den was Shamrock, but there was one in Iowa, Militich.
Yeah, Pat Miletich camp. Yeah.
That shit was crazy too.
Same breed, right? Yeah. Hardcore motherfuckers that are gonna go in there and you're gonna fight. Like the training is that you're gonna fight and you're gonna get good because you're fighting all the time.
Right.
So I mean that it's an era of machismo and kind of the lack of science behind it, but that was just how you did it back in the day. So
there was no data to really like to see how to develop fighters. So that you just throw them in the cage.
A bunch of bonehead fighters are writing numbers down like that for sure, right? So it only comes with the popularity of a sport like UFC, and the money behind it for them to actually do that research and prove a lot of the science. So it's nice to see that the sport's evolving. Like I said, I enjoy sparring. It's me being that fat bullied kid when I was when I was young. Just feeling good about whoever it is, whether I win or lose that match or that round or whatever, like I'm in here doing it. So I love sparring personally, but I can acknowledge that it's not good for your health and that it's nice to see that the sport's evolving so that you have longevity in it. And the worst thing you can see is somebody when they're in their 40s or 50s, like slurring or,
dude. Especially when you've seen them speak correctly. Like I think Chuck Liddell's a good example. One of my favorite fighters, but like he's like slurring his words and stuff now, and it sucks to see.
Yeah, and he's from that era, right?
Yeah, bro.
So
that was another camp. That was wild. I keep thinking Kempo, but it's not Kempo.
Yeah, he came from a karate.
Yeah.
He came from a karate background.
What's the name of the coach's coach?
I'm looking at his
face
I see his
in face,
my
the
mind,
glasses.
but for whatever reason I can't. Something to do with an X because they would make that sign. But anyways, yeah, another great camp. I mean, that's where Glover came from. I'm pretty sure. So
where do you see the sport going right now? Like we've seen the evolution of like the wrestlers, ground and pound, the jiu-jitsu guys starting out at the beginning. How do you see the sport going right now? Do you see any shifts
with MMA?
Yeah, it could be with MMA.
I think that it's on a crazy trajectory right now. The sport evolves so fast because you have the highest level of the guys and girls at the highest level that are doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody who's an enthusiast or a martial artist is watching that, is breaking it down, is analyzing it. The access to that footage is very easy. So like the best practices that are cutting edge are getting put into those practices the next Monday. Right. Yeah. So like the sport evolves super fast. Seeing kids that are doing MMA at 10 years old, and again, no punches to the head or things like that, but like they're in it. They've got plenty of experience by the time they're 18, going into the amateur pro circuits. I think it's going to start getting more like Mortal Kombat, type
like stylistically.
Where like things are going to get so technical that it's going to look almost like a video game. And you're seeing it in some of these young guys that are doing like crazy spinning kicks and jumping off the cage and just the level of technique where they're one-shot KOing people. So
it's true, man. That's true. That's a good point because if you look at the sport, martial arts is so vast. You know what I mean? There's so much information, so much stuff that people can go back and look at and see what works and what doesn't, and people add that to their games. So the styles are just going to break apart. I agree with you.
Yeah. So I mean, you're going to have to be a master at everything, and then you're going to need to be a super master at whatever your specific technical craft may be.
Right.
And then the best of the best will be able to adapt, very Bruce Lee-esque, but like, no style is the best style.
Yeah.
Where if you're a wrestler, then my wrestling defense is going to be on point. And if you're a striker, then I'm going to take you down and I'm just going to beat you at where you're the most, where you're the worst at, where your skill level is the most lacking, and exploit those holes. And so you'll start seeing that level of technique evolve. And, obviously the UFC is a mammoth now when it comes to an entertainment industry and a sport. So to me, I'm biased, but I think it's the greatest sport that there is, right? I think it's the greatest entertainment sport. I'm confused why people aren't watching pay-per-views all the time.
Right.
But that's just me. But I think even objectively, like it's becoming one of the most popular sports in the world. Like it's starting to, get to those big, what are the big three? Like baseball, basketball, football, soccer, MMA.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what goes after those main four.
Pickleball.
Pickleball's coming up as well.
Coming up.
No hate to pickleball. Even no-gi jiu-jitsu. I mean, it's a great other kind of litmus test or a good exemplar of like how fast that sport is growing in conjunction with MMA and the popularity and even the resurgence of boxing now. Like there's so many people that watch boxing that never cared about it. That resurgence of boxing,
what I don't like about it is kind of like that. Like it's not the boxing that we used to have in the 90s.
And what do you mean?
Like the people that are competing in boxing now are the ones that are at least getting the major stage, or like the YouTubers or these people that are doing these random fights that aren't like as technically sound as you would see if you're watching, I don't know, Tito Trinidad or Mirkoto or.
Is your issue with the YouTube boxing, or is it people that are unqualified that are fighting?
I think that technically the people that are fighting, well, you'll find good fights. You will find good fights, but I think that what's taking the main stage of boxing are not as technically sound as you would see in the 90s.
100% agree, right? Okay. Especially with this advent of YouTube, YouTube boxers.
Right.
I think it's trash. I don't enjoy watching people that aren't technically sound going at it. To me, as a martial artist, like I'm not picking up any new information from that. Right. So that's where I'm depraved, or deprived of that new education.
Yeah.
It might be like mindlessly entertaining, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's
like
not
it's more the storyline than it is the actual fight.
Yeah, it's drama. It's clickbait drama. But at the same time, all of that nonsense is helping the sport of boxing get more viewers, more popularity. So you see these purists, like I think they're talking about Gervonta Davis and,
Mhm.
and Vasil Lomachenko.
Mhm.
Like,
Oh, Lomachenko's been out for a while.
he's been out for a while,
Dude, but I love watching that guy fight.
I mean, he's beautiful,
Yeah.
right? So anyways, like that type of fight might not have been as popular 10 years ago just because people weren't giving a shit about boxing.
I
But
could see
now
that,
that
yeah.
MMA enthusiasts are also specializing in boxing and, you know, being a fan of that,
Yeah.
and the YouTube
Viewership.
audience,
Yeah.
the viewership exactly, that are coming over and experiencing real boxing as well, like
Yeah.
people are starting to pick up into it. So it's like it's almost like a necessary evil in order to
That
continue
makes sense. I agree with you then. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess it was kind of seeing it from a martial arts standpoint that
yeah, as a martial artist, it sucks.
Yeah, dude.
I hate
I
it.
get it.
But as a realist, you know, I understand why they're doing it. It's making a lot of money. It's
Yeah.
and again, I think it's overall good for the sport. So I will, you know,
I'll allow it.
Exactly. Not that my opinion matters, but I'll allow it.
You're gonna
because
allow
I
it,
know-
right?
I mean, I'm not buying those pay-per-views, but
Yeah.
God bless whoever is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even as a purist myself, like, okay, Jake Paul, Mike Perry, like that's entertaining. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch it, you know. So
There's so many other type of combat sports that are coming out now, like the bare knuckle boxing. I'm really interested in the bare knuckle MMA. It's been more grappling intense because people want to break their knuckles.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love it. I think the Game Bread FC is doing it. Masvidal is doing it, so it's a good on brand for them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's kind of where the evolution of the MMA could go.
Yeah.
Bare knuckle boxing is obviously
That's
super
wild,
entertaining.
bro.
I've been to a bunch of them myself.
Have you?
Oh yeah.
How is it in person?
They're fun.
Yeah.
They're fun. I mean, they're blood sports, you know, so it activates that reptilian part of your brain that's like, wow, you know,
What the fuck?
you're excited because somebody's head is spurting blood.
Think quickly too. It's
Fast,
like
yeah, very fast. So it's a lot of action-packed stuff. I've got some friends of mine that are considering it. I know some people that have done it. So like it's a unique sport. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think I would ever do it, but I can admire it, you know, as a new sport, and it helps to like, again, I just think that MMA kind of like spearheaded all this stuff.
Yeah, dude.
So now that MMA is so popular, like you can have these branch offs. I mean, like obviously slap fighting is something that's
you know, wild. I haven't seen that.
You
one.
know, it's nuts, but it is viral.
Talk about CTE,
you know,
bro.
entertainment. Yeah. Yeah. Terrible for your brain, but also like very easy to chunk into a 6-second clip on Instagram.
Yeah,
right?
that's it got huge, dude.
Which is exactly. So like, that's the purpose of that sport. So I can understand it, but like, even now they're doing like leg kick championships. Right?
I did
like,
not know about that one.
So that's a new thing, is like now they're doing leg kick, basically like slap fighting, but with leg kicks. Which to me, as an old school karate guy, like that's what we used to do to train ourselves, is just kick each other.
But a good leg kick, dude. I'm not my brother was used to train Muay Thai, and he would fuck with me and give me like the knee, like that, dude. Fuck that.
Yeah, it's the worst. It's the worst. So anyways, it's just the sport is so popular and it's so on fire right now that I think it's what's lending itself to all these other subsidiary, you know, bare knuckle and slap fight and leg kick championship and card jitsu. I mean, there's so
card
many
jitsu.
Wacky,
That's another one, bro.
So many wacky things.
Did you see the one with a tire? There's a tire in the middle, and it's like wrestling, and you got to put the guy inside the tire.
Yes.
That's pretty wild too.
Again, people are just coming up with the most random ideas now, but they would have never done that had MMA not popularized the idea of combat and, you know, entertainment around combat.
100%.
So I think it's going to the moon.
Yeah,
you know. And I just love being a part of it. I don't. My plan is never to be a UFC fighter. That's never been my thing. I think if I can coach and help other people get whatever their goals are, that's a great side thing for me. But to me, I'm a lifelong martial artist. I'll do it until I can't.
Yeah.
Until I can, and the more people that I can help, that, you know, the same way that people helped me. There's so many people that, you know, I could have talked about on the podcast where, like, you know, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have stuck with it. You know, inspirations, so many people that have helped me.
Mentors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or even if I don't know them, just like somebody who I looked up to, George St. Pierre. I mean, it's a great example. I haven't met that guy yet, but like just his career is something that you can admire as a kid and be like, okay, I want to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great, man. I think it's great that you have that mentality and that approach to teaching. So, I mean, I think we're already over the time, but is there anything that you want to promote? That's what he was scaring you with. He was telling you it was 10 minutes.
I figured, something to that extent. No, just come try out the class. Come to Ground Game. I have my own business, Command Media. So if you're looking for help with branding and marketing stuff,
do you have like a specific niche?
No. We work with everybody. I guess our whole thing is that we want to help tell the story of the brand no matter who they are. So we've worked with corporate, we've worked with combat, we've worked with swimwear, we've worked with restaurants. There's no business that we haven't like seriously considered working with. As long as you're doing something good in the community. I mean, like that's really like our only limiting factors. Like we want to work with somebody that we want to work with.
Yeah, you don't work with shitheads.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, I mean, that's totally separate of this podcast. Come to the class.
Yeah.
Come spar and come train with us. We need more good bodies. And that would be the biggest promo that I'd like to push out there.
All right, man. Well, thank you for coming on. It was great. I had a lot of fun, dude.
Yeah, it was cool. Thank you, man.